On this video, we're going to go over how to solve equations that have squares and cubes. First off, let me remind you, when you're solving an equation such as this, if you want to get x by itself, you always ask yourself, well, what's happening to x? In this case, we're multiplying by 2. And ask yourself, well, what's the opposite, the inverse of multiplying by 2? Is to divide. So you divide both sides by 2. So what that does is now we have 2 divided by 2, which is 1. It cancels out that multiplying. So to undo something, you always do the opposite or the inverse operation to cancel it out. And that's the case for these problems as well. We need to know the opposite, the inverse of squaring is square root. So if we have this problem up here, x squared equals 64, and we want to undo this square, then we need to do the opposite of squaring, which is square root. And again, what you do on one side, you have to do on the other side as well. And what that does is it cancels out the square, so we're just left with x. Now the square root of 64 is asking what number multiplied by itself gives you 64. So if you go through the different options, you see that it's 8. 8 times 8 is 64. But it's also negative 8 times negative 8. That also gives you 64. So this answer will be positive or negative 8. Now let's do the next one. Again, to undo the square, we need to do the opposite of squaring, which is square root. You have to take the square root of this whole thing. That cancels out the square, so we're left with x equals the square root of 36 over 49. Or I like to split it up at this point and think of it as the square root of 36 divided by the square root of 49. So again, we're going to follow that process. What number multiplied by itself gives us 36? If you go through the options, you'll see it's 6 times 6 is 36. But also negative 6 times negative 6. Now let's do the same for 49. What number times what number gives us 49? What number multiplied by itself gives us 49? 7. And also negative 7. So our answer is positive or negative 6/7. Now let's try one with cubes. Now cubes is something raised to the third power, and the opposite of cube is cube root. So to undo this cube here to get x by itself, then what I need to do is take the cube root of both sides. What that looks like is the same symbol as square root, but we're going to put a number outside of that root symbol, or it's called a radical symbol. We have to do the same over here. So that cancels out on the left, so we're just left with x. And what the cube root of 27 is saying is what number multiplied by itself 3 times gives you 27. So you can go through the different options, and I'm going to show you how to do this on a calculator in my next video. But if you go through the different options, you'll see that it is 3 times 3, which gives you 9, times 3 is 27. So the answer is 3. Would negative 3 work? No, because a negative times another negative would actually be negative 27. So the answer is just 3. Now let's do the same thing for B. Same deal. To undo this cube, we're going to do the opposite, the inverse, which is to take the cube root. So we need to take the cube root of the left side, or the right side as well. That cancels out our 3 there, so on the left, we're just left with x. And on the right, we're going to take the cube root of 64 and also the cube root of 125. So if you go through the different options for these as well, number multiplied by itself 3 times gives you 64. you'll see that the answer there is 4. So 4 is in our numerator. And then for our denominator, what number multiplied by itself 3 times gives us 125? If you go through the different options, you'll see that it is 5. So the answer would be 4/5. And again, on my next video, I'm going to show you how to figure out the square root and cubed root of different numbers using the Desmos online calculator.